There's a lot of action around the sanctuary this week. There's still some animals in breeding mode, others are raising their young. These cedar waxwings are just relaxing in the heat of the afternoon. But everyone still has to find food. This eastern kingbird is flying from his perch to catch an insect on the wing and then returning to his perch, a behavior known as hawking. His mate is still sitting on its nearby nest. These mallards are busy dabbling. They use their stringer-like bill to gather food such as algae and plankton and invertebrates while the water drips out. Also lingering on this pond is a mother duck with her 6 ducklings. The ducklings will leave the nest the same day they are born, and already know how to swim and feed themselves. However, they still have a lot to learn by following Mother Duck. She will show them the best places to dabble, how to best evade predators, and when the time comes, she will show them the migratory routes to their wintering grounds. A separate family of mallards showed up on the man-made pond. Notice how the mother is teaching them to be perfectly still and camouflage in the shadows. As boisterous as woodpecker chicks are, with their incessant chirping, it's a wonder that nests ever survive depredation. I suspect that the parents linger nearby, and if they cease to hear the sound, they will come quick because they know something is wrong. There's probably about 4 chicks in the nest. The parental duties are fairly evenly split. Typically, the mother will incubate by day and the father by night. It is said that the father usually ventures farther from the nest to feed, but I've seen the father more than the mother. After about a month, the chicks will leave the nest, but will still be fed by the parents for some time afterward. Here is the father returned about 5 minutes later for another feeding. While observing the woodpecker nest, I must have startled this deer. I suspect I was in its typical path, which is why it was giving alarm calls. This deep into the sanctuary, the deer have not quite acclimated to us. However, the deer that graze in the beaver meadow hardly seem fazed by our presence. All it took was an exchange of a few gestures before she went about her business. I think this doe is grazing on multiple plants. but she definitely likes the flower heads of the Valeria. I'm glad to see this healthy looking deer. Last week, I compared common whitetails and 12-spotted skimmer females. This week, at the man-made pond, I found a male of each species. Notice the wing patterns and the shorter abdomen on this common whitetail. Here is the 12-spotted skimmer, named for the 12 dark spots on its wings. And of course, it has a longer abdomen than the common whitetail. This metallic blue-green damselfly is the ebony jewel-winged. It is a male, as indicated by its all black wings. The females have white markings at the tips. I noticed some good diversity in this batch of daisies, such as this tarnished plant bug, this bee mimic, which is actually a flower fly, this goldenrod spider, which changes its body color to match the petals of the flower, and I think this is an Agochlora sweat bee fallen victim to a spider. This 9-bark tree, probably named for the various bark types, is its own little microcosm buzzing with insect life. Unfortunately, I ran out of time this week to make detailed observations, but I do plan to next week. However, I did have a little bit of extra time for this Virginia Tanukin moth. Virginia is actually the southern extent of its range, and actually ranges as far north as Newfoundland, and has been spreading west as far as the Rocky Mountains over the past 60 years or so. It is a member of the tiger moth family, Archaeidae, and like most other tiger moths, it is a generalist when it comes to feeding habits. The milkweed that is blooming also seems to attract a lot of insects. And we've had calligrapha beetles, Baltimore checker spot caterpillars, thrice-banded crab spiders, the Trahobda grubs that have survived have gotten bigger, and a mystery insect. Some notable blooms are the moth mullein, Penstemon digitalis, and staghorn sumac. And fresh cattails are popping up. And we're currently working on the corduroy we did in the spring and covering it with gravel. And that about covers it for this week at the sanctuary. At first glance, the city can seem random and chaotic, but after a couple of weeks, I start to recognize individuals and patterns. The arrival time of the bank workers and where they park. I noticed the homeless lady in her blue jacket walks by around 8:15 or so, and shortly thereafter, the postal worker has a cigarette in her favorite spot. And I'm also recognizing individuals and patterns with the wildlife, such as this favorite perching spot next to the church for the American robin. And I've also noticed where several European starling nests are. But the main reason we're spending so much time down here is to keep an eye on the falcons. The chicks really seem to favor these light posts sticking out from behind Hotel Utica. And the adults seem to favor the windows on the steeple of Grace Church. All four peregrine falcons seem to have an affinity for the state office building. Jade and Grace are in the top right-hand corner, Astrid is right below them, and over here is Aries. Notice how much larger Astrid is than Aries. And it's not uncommon for Kate to sleep like this, with a wing or tail hanging over the ledge. Interestingly, regardless of the falcon's presence, these pigeons like to hang out on this roof right below them. There are usually about half a dozen or so, but I'm told this number is way down from what it was 3 years ago when the falcons moved in. The chicks are becoming proficient flyers and often play games that help them hone their skills. And perhaps just as important, they are also becoming proficient landers. I'm not quite sure why, but I've seen Grace picking at the screen a couple of days this week. Somebody suggested perhaps there are insects inside that she's getting at. The way she's chewing indicates that that may be the case. Although I've never heard of peregrines eating insects. Not only did I find some of their leftover scraps this week, but one of the adults' secondary flight feathers. As most everybody knows, rock doves are very common downtown, although most people refer to them as pigeons. Like many birds do, this head bobbing as they walk helps them perceive the depth of their surroundings. Males can be distinguished from females by having extra purple around the neck. Here is a male roughing up his neck feathers and strutting for the female to try and impress her. She doesn't seem to be showing much interest, but if she does, they will form a monogamous pair and mate for life. I'm not sure who threw the bread out for them. It was there when I arrived early this morning. Pigeons are one of the only birds that can drink water through their beak like a straw, rather than having to lap it up. Pigeons mostly feed on grains and seeds. This one looked like it was foraging, so I went over to investigate to see if I could figure out what it was eating. I didn't capture it on film, but I definitely saw the pigeon picking at this crack. The only semblance of food I see are these ants. They are known to rarely eat insects, so I wonder if this is what they were getting at. In the same parking lot, there are house sparrows gathering materials to build a new nest. I think it's the same pair that had already raised a brood right here, but it could be a new pair coming in. They will build their nest in cavities out of twigs and weeds and such, and then line it with something soft, such as feathers or cotton fluff. Here's the male gathering the soft lining. And in the meantime, this mother is still feeding her fledgling. And it appears to me that the parents are trying to coax this brancher into its first flight. I didn't stick around long enough to see if she ever jumped. The biomass of the urban flora is sparse, but there is still some diversity, such as motherwort and bladder campion and St. John's wort, butter and eggs, nightshade, curled dock, plantains are going to seed, and there's even some poison ivy working its way into the cracks. And there's not a ton of insects either, but I did notice a grub this week and all of these aphids. And since Fledge Watch is coming to an end, this will be the last time I'm down here on official business for a while.